It is giving me a progress bar for preparing to live stream to YouTube.
Looks like we're live.
All right. Mr. Chairperson, would you?
Okay, so if we're live, thank you everyone who's joined our November board meeting public session. I'm Todd Moore, and we're ready to get going here. So I'm calling the meeting to order.
All right, thank you. Let me start with today's agenda. And is the slides coming through to the YouTube channel? Can Miles or Tracy confirm?
They're not.
We see no sharing on Zoom either at this point.
Okay, let me read to do that. How about now?
Yes, that looks like the private session, however.
Oh, sorry.
And we can't see that on the stream.
It may just be a problem with the title slide. It looks like it's...
No, it isn't. I just, it was too small to see the print, so I'll just reshare with the public slides.
I can see at least earlier when you were sharing it, it's up on YouTube now.
Okay. So all right, now you should be able to see the public board meeting slide. Is it sharing appropriately?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Before we get started, please take note of the antitrust compliance notice that was furnished as part of the board package. All right. Today's agenda is as stated. We will approve our board meeting minutes and talk a little bit about Node Interactive and our certification and community updates. But what we want to make sure we get through today is our individual board member discussion that has been discussed among the community as well as our board members during working sessions. So as part of the board package, we provided October board meeting minutes for the public session as Exhibit B. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All right. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
And abstaining. Okay, they have been approved as submitted. All right. I also wanted to bring up that some stats from our 2017 Node Interactive. I think it was generally agreed last month that our event was a success. I had a lot of good feedback from attendees and sponsors alike. I think our venue in Vancouver was quite a good venue. It was a beautiful city. It was cost effective for us to put on a conference there. The airport seemed to provide a decent travel hub for people from all over the world. And as such, we decided to renew in that location for next year. These are some general stats. We did provide a activity report for the sponsors of the event and the board members. There's also other information in there that we could provide. It's quite a lengthy report, but we could provide that as well to any of the community members who are interested. Any comments or questions on the Interactive 2017? All right.
I would like to ask,
sure.
What was the number of, if you have it, how many people were registered to be an individual foundation or individual member from the registrations?
I don't have that handy. I don't know if it is in the attached in the report, Tierney, but we can find out for you.
It's 112 people.
112.
Yeah.
Great.
So that was great. Yeah, it was very successful having that add-on as part of attendance, the registration.
Awesome.
Any other
Thank
questions? So for 2018, our event will now be called JS Interactive. It's still Node Interactive that we've come to know and love, and is the primary place for Node developers to get together, and we'll have our collaboration summit and all the other events. But we were trying to find a way to get more of the JavaScript ecosystem to participate. And so we just are dropping the Node from the name so that they don't feel like they're not being included, and still doing all the same activities and more. We have also partnered with the JS Foundation to bring in more of the JavaScript community and help us expand our reach. There was a good Twitter conversation last week about when they announced the 2018 lineup of events that are open source events that are produced by the Linux Foundation, and there was a lot of good feedback on that. Particularly, I think Joy was mentioned that she was excited about being able to work with the frameworks at the Node Interactive Conference and having time to collaborate there. Our goal, though, would be to have a much bigger show, about twice the size of this year's, and hopefully a more diverse set of topics. Actually, a lot of our topics are well beyond Node, but I think it's just a good branding change for us to draw in some of these people that we depend on to deliver applications that normally don't consider coming to Node Interactive. But, any questions or comments on that?
I think congratulations to the staff. Obviously, a lot of good work, and it was a great venue. And I think we got people out that hadn't been around in a while to any of the events. So I thought it was great to see some folks that we hadn't seen for a while. So hats off.
Yeah. Great. All right. Next on the agenda is a update on certification from Tracy Hines. Tracy, can you give us an update?
Yeah, so the early interest signups are up at this point above 2,600. So that's folks who wanted to participate in the alpha and beta parts of the project. We did have a stall in volunteer contributors due to them having a lot of other work to do this time of year regarding finishing the items. So we've had to update. Unfortunately, we've had to push out the timeline for release quite a bit. And this is also in coordinating things such as version updating for our environment. What we're looking at now is the items are being worked on by David Mark Clements of Nearform, and I'm seeing those go through as we sit. He's also been one of our lead contributors on it from the get-go. So we're very grateful for our contributors who have been helping us along the way. Yeah, any questions? And I'll also update this timeline on the public GitHub. We've got some public and private repos for where this work is getting done, and I need to make sure to update that there as well.
Thanks, Tracy. All right. Additionally, you had some other community updates as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the first item, I believe we've also got Rachel White and Tierney on the call, who are our community committee co-chairs, so they'll be able to speak to this as well. But it has been proposed in the community committee that individual membership could be taken on as a responsibility. And one of the things that was discussed there was whether we as a committee had the bandwidth for it. So there have been no objections to that thus far. And that has been even with the context being filled in for what a large responsibility that is, to not only manage the existing membership, but to audit what's happened with the individual membership program up to date, and figure out how to provide value for members and in the growing membership moving forward. The Spring Collaborators Summit planning is definitely underway. It's looking like first talks would be potentially at JSConf EU in Berlin, but that is not set in stone. We're having to manage the logistics of a venue alongside a place that is advantageous for collaborators outside of the US to be able to collect in one place, but also have a great collaborators summit. So we're looking at somewhere that essentially partners with a community conference so that we can sort of maximize that outreach and also be able to bring some people into the fold who aren't necessarily collaborators yet, but are really interested in doing so. And then the last update there is the individual membership. So as of this month, we're at 241 for individual membership active members, and 112 of those were from the individual membership program signups that we added on as part of the Node Interactive conference registration. So at this point, it is generated nearly half of our individual membership. So.
Great. Thank you. Any questions on the community update? All right. Next item on the agenda is the individual director discussion. And it encompasses more than just the individual director. There was the proposals and discussion that has been happening for the last approximately the last few months. And we have two primary proposals, but other factors that we need to consider in relation to those proposals. And we summarized that in the Google Doc that is linked here. There's a proposal that Tierney and Rachel are representing, not necessarily championing as much as explaining, and that is the proposal that perhaps we would convert one of our seats from an individual elected seat to a appointment from someone from the community committee, not unlike the way that we do with the TSC director as a board member from the TSC. And then the other one is the proposal of a board subcommittee. Had in the last meeting volunteered to help walk us through that. I think it's a we'll go through each of those proposals, but there's probably some sidebars and some other information that's relevant. So if you need to bring something up, I encourage you to do so. So let's Rachel or Tierney, which of you was going to talk about the individual first proposal?
Sorry, the
Mark,
individual.
can I just add something really quickly? Sorry, Tierney, before we get into this. If you look at the text of the proposal on Google Docs, the proposals have actually been split so that the individual director membership and the ComCom directorship conversation are supposed to be completely separate. And so I would just like to ask everyone who's looking at this to please look at that Google Doc rather than this slide for the accurate proposals that we're looking at presenting today.
Yeah, I should also say thanks to Miles and Tracy had spent some time on this.
Can we screen share that doc? I think at this point, screen sharing it won't provide any a security risk or anything like that. It's a public document, I think.
Yeah. Let me get that up here. Are people able to see the Google Doc as it's being shared?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, all right. So we were going to start with the, well, this is a little bit, talk about the director seat for the community committee if we went off the agenda. But did you want to bring that up, Rachel or Tierney?
Yeah, sure. So are we going off of the agenda or off of the doc?
Let's start with the director seat for the community committee, and then we'll go to the board subcommittee second.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'll be taking this over. Rachel has a bad connection right now. So we'd like to request that we have a board seat, a director seat rather, similar to how the TSC does, basically following the same processes that the TSC has. And this is to ensure a few things. We'd like to have top level representation from the committee to the board, both for accountability and for things that we want to share and request. So in terms of requesting, things like funding requests, having a direct line of communication to the board for that, and having representation in those. Onboarding for unique projects, like we have seen with Node together, to kind of help us and our outbound efforts to expand the Node.js ecosystem. And then representation and discussions around things like a charter and the kind of foundation documents that we abide by effectively. Some other things are we'd like to be able to have accurate community representation to the board from an organic merit-based group, which is how at least I personally see the Node.js community committee. Our work is largely outbound, outward facing, and I see the TSC as the inward facing group. And so we'd like to be able to effectively be able to have a say and surface that communication upward to you. The community committee is merit-based, so we do have merit, but we do it very differently than TSC, basically effectively working around time invested and ensuring that you are interested and engaged with our project, with the committee. And so we want to be able to surface that to you. Kind of tabling our reasons. We don't want to add someone to the board who would be detrimental or impact the regular board activities. Rather, we're looking to help, enable the board to have an accurate and active representation from the community, with the goal of working with you to ensure that we're helpful and beneficial as part of the foundation, and be able to really grow the community committee and the overall Node.js community.
Okay.
I definitely like to comment on this. So it's been brought to the board's attention several times in previous conversations that this proposal is not endorsed by the community committee. To review or remind, a rough draft was without proper context was shared to the community committee in private many months ago. It was never posted publicly. It was never iterated on by the committee. It was never made a committee agenda item. There was never a vote. This is a proposal that is brought to the board by Tierney and Rachel. They did not get consent from the community committee to represent this on their behalf, and without ever posting it publicly, it certainly isn't on behalf of the community. We have been told time and time again that we as directors must bring our own voices to the board. And to that end, not a single board member was willing to bring this proposal here. So in this scenario, when that voice couldn't be found, an outside voice was brought in for reasons I cannot understand and I have not been informed of. I am the representative to the community committee on this board. I find their proposal to undermine the community and its chartered and its community and its charter. And I do not endorse it. And I didn't want to represent it here. It is also important to note that the previous chairs, Brian Hughes, worked with me often to coordinate board items, and I successfully followed through on all of them. To date, neither of the chairs, Tierney and Rachel, have reached out to me to coordinate on anything. And in fact, this is the first item, and it didn't even come from the community committee. I suggested several times that they create a proposal that simply asks for a director position without sacrificing an individual director position. I would have sponsored that proposal. I see now that this was broken out. And so as these two have been broken out, I certainly would have sponsored this if the chairs had brought it to me as their charter requires. I mean, the title of this has never been—
I'd like to object.
The title of this, I would like to finish. The title of this has never been "We'd like our own director." It's always been the individual member program changes proposal. They believe that a community committee director will be superior to an independently elected representative from the community. I do agree that someday the community committee should probably have a dedicated director. I do not believe the group is immature to that point to justify yet. Here's why. They've not delivered on the things the board has set out for them to do. First of all, there's inclusivity. There's been absolutely no movement on inclusivity. Let's not forget, this is where it all started. It was dropped from the TSC's domain, and ComCom was created in part to take on that initiative. Next, most of the work being done is self-formation and administration of themselves. If this work wouldn't exist if ComCom didn't exist. It doesn't yet lend to the project's mission statement. And then there are the groups that are under ComCom. We have evangelism. Its activity has severely dropped off and is not discussed in ComCom. There are no evangelism meetings. We have a group called community events. There are 2 open issues, 0 closed. There's been no activity in 5 months. We have Node.js collection. There is little activity there. However, that activity would exist without ComCom. Then, and finally, I have additional concerns. There's been a high amount of churn of the members. And so with members being like not even on the committee for under a year, there's a directorship proposal here to put someone on the board for a year term. So, I mean, it seems a little off. So still, additionally, there's still no reps from groups like NodeBots and Node School. This is some of the promise of ComCom from the beginning. I'm not sure that there are even conversations happening about it. Node Together is represented via Rachel. Last I knew, it was in limbo, still trying to figure out what's happening with it. Looking around online, it doesn't appear to have any activity now. I just really hope it's revived. It's an awesome program, but ComCom is not actively discussing it. And
we are actually.
I have several points I'd like to address from this. So you mentioned that the body that elects individual membership is elected by the community. I'd like to ask how representative of the entire Node.js community that body of individual membership is. And I'd like to state that we've already seen that there's 200 members, 150 of those roughly, or 250 members, sorry. 150 of those roughly registered from Node Interactive, meaning at the past election, there were only 100 members. So that doesn't quite seem representative of the entire Node.js community. We've already done a suite of outreach around talks. I've given a talk focusing around the community committee, I believe 4, 5, 6, somewhere in their times in the past year, including at Node Interactive, helping and encouraging people to come participate in the community. We have several people who have started from those talks coming in and participating now. Something else I'd like to mention is that you say that the community committee hasn't had members active for a year, any member that's individually been active for a year. The community committee hasn't been around for a year. We are coming up on that mark, but we have not actually hit that mark. And as you know, William, it's hard to grow a community and grow a group who is actively focused on community, not hard, strict technical problems, but people problems. And that's what we've done. And we are continuing to grow that. Part of our meritocracy, if you want to call it that, is that we have a long onboarding process. We have a 3-month onboarding process to become a member. That is part of the charter, I believe. And it's something that we actively encourage and people to come participate in, but it's not easy, it's not quick. And that's why it's there. To ensure that the people working on this are actually people who are interested and actively going to be engaging. Further, I'd like to object to your assertion that the work around the Node.js collection would be happening without the repo. Actually, a lot of that work is done over the medium at nodejs.com alias, where several of us, the technical editors, myself, Zibby Keaton, and Tracy from the foundation, actively discuss articles that are submitted to us, and this was done intentionally outside of GitHub to provide a more welcoming and lower barrier to submitting content. We actively have content coming through that medium, and that is not through the GitHub. that's an intentional choice.
So how many ComCom members are a part of that?
I don't have access to that alias offhand, but I can tell you in a second. And that, to be fair, that is a team, I believe, in the ComCom, not a actual set of the ComCom. So
yeah, it's just listed under the ComCom's README as a group underneath them, and so I was just mentioning the activity I see there. And
yeah, and that activity is intentionally hidden to be active, a forum for people to engage privately and share their content, and to provide a more welcoming space than a public one on GitHub, where we have seen consistent bike shedding and issues of kind of personal attacks. That is an intentional decision, and I strongly object to your assertions around that.
Right. I think a lot of what you're saying just lends to my point that the ComCom has just not matured, and I think that's specifically what we're talking about here. We need more maturity on ComCom and more ComCom people in the Node.js collection participating.
Why the Node.js collection specifically?
That's just the one you were speaking about. That's all.
And additionally, I would also like to object that we have talked several times about this proposal in ComCom. Both in the ComCom session. I'm not sure if they were private or public ones, but we have absolutely talked about this.
Yeah, if you could send this, if you could post the public meeting minutes where we discussed it, I'd be love to be proven wrong there.
I'll take a look into that. I can't offhand name those minutes, but I can take a look into that.
I mean, the reality is, though, it has not been discussed in public.
Okay.
At this point, so.
We have discussed it in the community committee. It might have been in private sessions. That is still within the community committee.
So
right. So we should open up to let other people voice their opinions.
All right. All right, I guess if no one else has any thing to add on the ComCom director seat,
I'd like to add two points that kind of separate from what's been discussed up until now. Just around my own thoughts, I think that the community committee, at the very least, despite how we're all discussing it, I at least hope that we can reach consensus that we would all like the community committee to be successful. And I don't think that there's anyone here who doesn't want to see the community committee be successful.
I absolutely agree with that and emphasize it.
And I personally am not sure how the committee can be fully successful if not fully represented. In particular, part of the proposal mentioned wanting to take over the responsibility for the individual membership program and trying to grow and find success for the individual membership program. And I think that there is a conflict there if the community committee is responsible for the individual membership and the individual membership has the representation at the board. It doesn't mean that the individual membership should not have representation at the board as well, but it seems odd for me for only the individual membership to be represented if the community committee is going to take over the responsibility for it. So, independent of how we've gotten to here with this proposal or where the community committee is, I would like to propose that if the community committee is taking over responsibility for the individual membership, that they will not be able to do so successfully without representation at the board.
Okay. Well, they do have representation. They have myself and Ashley. And the thing, and as I mentioned, Brian Hughes worked with me a lot to bring things to the board, and I accurately represented them and resolved all things. But Tierney and Rachel as chairs so far have not.
I'd actually like to say that's a success on our end.
Yeah.
We've not, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, my connection's pretty bad, so I apologize if it breaks up. Tierney and I have had a lot of work to do in terms of just cleanup and maintenance and trying to get things back to a point from months of, a group that was hurt. And so a lot of the work that we've been trying to do, while yes, is still getting a lot of the working groups back in order and ready to be able to be at that productive point again, has been trying to get the community to trust us and to want to be a part of the community committee so that they're able to be helpful for the foundation. So I'm sorry if you feel that we are not doing, I'm using air quotes right now. You can't see doing enough, but we're still in a healing process and it is going to take time. And that's all that I'm going to add right now.
I'd like to.
I don't follow how that equals like circumventing your representatives to the board. To
I would like to object to your use of the word circumventing, and please consider the words that you're using here.
Right. I do not think we have had an issue, or we've not had an issue that needed to be brought up until this issue. We have had meetings with William several times discussing this, and that I would see that as a success on our end, that we have not had something that needed to be made forward.
So I think that
we should time box these.
Yeah, we gotta talk. I think that we've gotten opinions from a representative sample of the community committee here, and as well as our individual director. Are there other thoughts on the director seat before we move on? And I really stress that we need to give the other people on the agenda some time to speak on their thoughts as well.
I will make one simple comment, which is that the community committee is a peer committee to the technical steering committee, and the technical steering committee has a director seat, regardless of the scope of the individual director seats. And this is one of the reasons that we teased this apart in the proposal. Regardless of the individual director seats, having parity between the TSC and the ComCom, having representation on the board seems very reasonable to me.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sarah. All right.
So
Go ahead.
Why don't we move on to the other suggestion? Right. So I said I would represent this. I think it's been pointed out, we're trying to build ComCom into something. We're trying at the same time to bring in additional members. We've had a limited amount of success at Node Interactive. There's millions of users out there, but we still have barely scraped the surface of that. And we don't have the voice of, a big part of our community, the end users, who feel uncomfortable oftentimes or unable to go and open up an issue on GitHub or engage through that mechanism. Especially enterprise developers, we find, are unable to go and do that. So this method that I'm proposing here is something I've seen done in other organizations. And it's a first step towards potentially, I think, having a ComCom seat as we go through time, as we build up the membership. But I think what we saw in the experiment to have the individual director seats is it was maybe too early, and I think it's still too early in the formation of what we're doing with ComCom. So the proposal is to provide help, guidance, support, strong support with members of the board and participation to help the ComCom group have much more of a time slice of people who are here to help and make sure we fund and provide guidance. And that comes through the committee process, that the things that we have to do, the rebuilding that we have to do, take substantial amounts of time to go and work through. These are lengthy discussions, and doing that within the scope of the board meetings, bringing the issues in has been ineffective and has at some points held the board really to not getting through all the things that it needs to work through for the benefit of the foundation. And it leaves us, with an inability to get all the business of the foundation done. So in this case, what we would do is at least a first step, is to create a committee, appoint board members as part of that, bring the ComCom and other participants who want to be in it, whether it's TSC members, ComCom members, people from the outside who are users, who we can bring in, super users, people who will help to promote and build the foundation, and eventually hopefully become either individual active members or bring their organizations in such that they're members, to participate in these sessions and discussions and provide guidance and make sure that any funding issues or any issues of major consequence that we have to create policy and direction on get appropriate attention of senior level people. So that would be my take on what this committee would go and do. They would have to meet regularly. Obviously, we're looking at a large scope of the community, not a much smaller subset that we've been talking about. They would certainly help to handle all the resource requests, the budgetary requests, and bring those either back to the board, or we can delegate responsibility essentially to members of the committee to make decisions and choices. That's within our power. We can actually give real action to a committee. It doesn't have to have everything come back to the board. We can delegate responsibility. And therefore, we would have this process go on with some oversight over a period of time. We could evaluate how it works. So I think the pros are that we'll get to a much more in-depth, detailed discussion. The board itself will be able to function hopefully a little better. We'll be able to improve overall communications across many of the constituents that we have. We can do this in a much more regular fashion and essentially educate the entire foundation on what we're about and what we're trying to do, and to draw them into the process. So I think that's some of the pros of this. Yes, there's no formal vote on the board. However, there could be even more responsibility as we delegate decision-making to this committee. We don't have to keep it at the board level. We could certainly share the resources, I think, better, but there's a lot of responsibility here and people are going to have to step up. I think that's the hardest part of what I've seen in other organizations who have the same challenge is the broad scope of what the people in this position trying to build the community need to do. And it's challenging. And so I think what we'll end up doing is also bringing in the resources of the foundation in the form of staff as we go through this, to make sure that the committee is appropriately supported and that we move things along. But that's something that we're going to have to tease out as we go through this. So I think, in the end, this is an interim first step that moves us along, allows us to explore this, build it, structure it, give guidance to it, and eventually possibly get to a director seat that is in parity as others have suggested. But I think first we've got to shape it and give guidance and build it and do it in a way that's very, very broadly community friendly across all the constituents. That's my take on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor in a group like this. And I mean, there is a community grown and run group within the foundation already. And it's working on these things and actually finding out like who's in this segment of people. So who's it representing? And also what kind of issues are they facing that are not being highlighted already in the existing system, and then delivering that representation to the project. I mean, IBM even has a representative serving on that group along with myself. And all these people listed on here as potential representatives are like, we eagerly await them to join. So that'd be really cool. So I'm not sure why they wouldn't join the one that's being run by the community already and has traction. But I mean, if this proposal were to move forward, I guess I'd be concerned that this is the first time the board would take steps to conflict its own community's voluntary efforts.
No, I would expect hopefully joining the community committee, William, maybe I didn't make that clear, that however, that it would be that as their entree into helping participate, that we would direct people towards joining ComCom, but they would be meeting regularly with the board. Obviously, they would meet independent of the board and then at some regular basis.
Yeah, that worked. I mean, again, with the user feedback group that's already up and running and started, it's working to be a part of ComCom, so that kind of all fits in well there. I guess I'd rather favor the one that's community grown rather than a private group for the board of people that it's unclear how they got there, right? And then we get into like transparency and how do we have unbiased admission and inclusivity and diversity and yeah. So I mean, I guess I'm just more in favor of the user feedback group that's out there, which seems to do what this proposal has.
So I'd like to add that, yeah, the user feedback group stemmed from it is a ComCom project and it is being developed into a ComCom team. So that project is already a piece of the ComCom. And from looking at this document, this is both what the user feedback initiative started by Tracy and with myself and Michael from IBM, Michael Dawson from IBM as the first participants. This is what we are already doing. And so I'm not sure what the additional value out of this is.
So this was exactly, so I think you're again, I'll try to say it again. Maybe I'm misspeaking here. I'm sorry, but I expect that it's what we have going with essentially coming in and participating with direct board members to go and the committee therefore would be the people who are coming in through ComCom and the board members who would be direct participants in this to give it more time and direct attention. So am I not clear on that? Because I think we're circling around that point, and my expectation is as we drive everything through ComCom and work directly with many board members, not a single board member, to help and grow this and provide oversight and work with as we work through the issues here that we have in front of us.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I don't understand, the point that I'm not connecting is that how is this the goals? How are the goals of this group different than the goals of the ComCom? What's the additional difference here? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that.
They should be 100% aligned, Tierney. 100% aligned. And the difference here is that multiple board members become part of the committee, and that once it's a board committee, the board can actually delegate responsibility for activities so that they have the wherewithal to make financial decisions or other decisions as a proxy for the board, if we so choose. That's the difference.
Okay. If I can add one thing that I also felt was a great addition to this committee was with the inclusion of the technical steering committee as well. This committee seemed to be and this is, in my opinion, why it's a great separate proposal as well, aside from how anything else works out. It becomes a central place where all of the stakeholders and leadership of the project can work together to drive initiatives together. Even the board is not necessarily the appropriate place to be driving initiative. It's maybe the appropriate place to be agreeing and executing on initiative. But it seemed to me that this subcommittee would be a great place for cross-collaboration.
Yeah, it's something we've been lacking, and hopefully it solves that problem. It may be wrong, but I've seen it work other places, and I thought maybe we should give it a try.
Would that be it sounds like both these kind of scope changes would be good fits for the community committee if this is what the foundation is looking for. Would would it make sense to put this in the charter of the community committee and expand the scope of the community committee into this?
Well, we would write a charter for this, and we could alter the charter of the community committee as we put this together. Certainly, there's no reason not to.
Mhm.
So what I was suggesting was have this be audited into the edited into the community committee charter as a scope piece of the community committee, as part of what the community committee should be doing as its due diligence to the foundation and to the board and to the TSC.
Well, that would be too. First, I think we have to agree that we want to, as a board, create a committee and potentially delegate responsibility to it. And then secondly, then we would take up what the charter of the ComCom is and what we should alter as a result of the committee that we put in place. We're just a little out of order. That's all I think.
Yeah, Tierney, speaking to that as well, I don't think that it makes sense to be part of the ComCom's charter if it's something that the technical steering committee is going to participate in as well.
Yeah. Plus, there's the idea that there are people that are somewhat intimidated and participating in the ComCom or the TSC just because they don't have that culture, and it would give us the ability to invite them. Like I actually commend the onboarding process for the ComCom that Tierney and Rachel referred to earlier. It's just some people, especially users who are not as steeped in the open source development, might be a little bit intimidated by to participate. And I think it's important that we're cognizant of not putting any barriers for participation, especially for parts of the community that are not traditionally engaged as we have today.
So, Mark, I'm going to push back on that a tiny bit. I think that it's good that people who are not part of the leadership committees are included. And if you look in the document, we do mention, people from the greater community that are part of it. But I'm not convinced that a subcommittee of the board that includes directors of all of the major committees and board members is going to be any less intimidating. I think that the outreach that the community committee is talking about doing right now would effectively.
Yeah. Let me give you a better example that's just very practical, Miles. There are numerous organizations that are not allowed to participate on GitHub. So that's a limiting factor there that is beyond not even intimidation.
Yeah.
And that's actually something we're trying to address in the ComCom is.
Yeah, but that's where we are right now. So
yeah,
hence that's part of what we're trying to address here.
Okay.
So look, I mean, there's been, many people who are quietly sitting there on the sidelines. So are there other questions or concerns from other members of the board?
Well, I would just like, if we want to move forward on this, I would hope to inform the user feedback group sooner than later.
Yeah, so I guess the question is this something that we want to put up for a motion to form a committee and bring in a slate of members to initially start it off? And so, I haven't heard from maybe enough people, but if there's consensus to try this, let's at least bring it up for a vote here. If there's a second, then we can have a little more discussion, and then we can vote on it if that's appropriate. I think we're either not ready to do this, or
my take is we're not ready to do this yet. I don't think we have consensus. I think we could have a vote, but I don't think we have consensus. I think the subcommittee is probably the right direction.
I personally think that no matter what the outcome is with chairs, that the subcommittee is something that we should do. And I'm not entirely sure that we should block on moving forward with the subcommittee to figure out the director membership concerns. If is anyone else in feeling similar about that?
Yeah, it captures it well. I was linking them in my mind, and they don't need to be.
I would also point out, again, just for timeline's sake, I think that we had that in the board deck, but that the individual membership director election nominations begin next month for the seat of Ashley Williams, which is vacated in January.
And we didn't even touch on the individual membership seat in this conversation yet. I don't know that we have consensus around how the ComCom differs from the board committee and comfort with that relating to the end user committee as well. So while I agree that we need to move in this direction, I think we probably need to refine this a little bit further before we would even go toward a vote on it. But agree completely that it doesn't need to block on a director seat for ComCom or information around the individual membership seats. I think these three should be considered independently.
It's a very good point, Sarah. Thank you.
All right. Well, given that we don't seem to have consensus, I don't know that there's anything actionable from
I think the action that we still need then is for a few people who will work on refining this and help to bring this into something hopefully at the next meeting that we can take a vote on. So we don't have to do that here because we've run up against time. But in email, let's start an email thread and hopefully have some discussion and some assistance here then.
All right. Well, then I guess we will take that to email. Is there anything else that anyone has to bring up? We had put on the agenda to talk about the marketing and PR results, but since we've knowing ahead of time that we would probably run out of time, I think we probably will have to call the meeting unless there's something else that we need to bring up this session.
Okay. Well, so let's call a close here. Thank everybody for their participation. We've had some good conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't get to everything, but I think it's important to hear from both community members as well as the board members in this, because we are talking about making some fundamental shifts and how we go about execution. So thanks again, and we'll take this up in the next board discussion.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Let's call the meeting close.
Close.
Stopping live stream now.